Yeah, let's get things going. Everyone in the audience, thanks for joining us today. It is another Flow Party Friday, a double header this week, and we are very honored to have our friends from Old Unfold back with us today. This time, Ben and Alex, and they're going to give us a behind-the-scenes look at how Unfold kind of approaches their website design process. I think you've got two website projects that you've recently done. Walk through, and then along the way answer any questions. And I saw an announcement on Twitter, I believe it was yesterday, about Unfold Academy, and we'll discuss a little bit about that along the way as well. So, Ben and Alex, I'll let y'all take it away, and I'll be here to help moderate and get everyone in the chat questions answered as they come in. Thanks, y'all. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah. Thanks, Eric. Thanks for having us. Yeah, I'm a senior web designer at Unfold, and I'll let Alex introduce himself. But basically, we'll be chatting, running through a couple real client projects that we've done, so you guys can get the kind of the behind the scenes, get into the Figma files. But I do want to allow plenty of room for questions, so like we don't have to get through everything. I would love to just jump around and see what you guys want to chat about. Keep it flexible and casual.
Great.
And Alex.
Yeah, my name is Alex. I'm also a senior web designer with Unfold. Been with the company almost 2 years and worked with Benton pretty much that whole time. So we work pretty much every day together on almost every project. So definitely excited to jump in and kind of show us behind the scenes.
Awesome.
Yeah.
We're looking forward to it. As everyone is popping in, please, as you spot things, as Alex and Benton show things, ask questions in the chat, raise your hand, and we'll get everything going. So cool. Ben and Alex, y'all keep it going.
Cool. Yeah, let me share my screen. So yeah, just a quick overview of what we'll be doing. So like I said, we'll be sharing a couple real client projects that we've done at Unfold. So you get to see basically everything kind of like unfiltered. We're not going to be tidying up our files beforehand, so you guys get to see the real process. But if anyone have any questions before we start, like just to kind of kick things off? If no worries, if not, yeah, cool. Well, we're gonna start with one bigger project, and we have two. If we have time, we'll try to get to both of them. We actually have a third if we have extra time, but one is started with a full brand like rebrand for this company that our brand team did. So we basically took that full brand identity system and translated it into the web. And then we have another project that did not have a brand. So we get those a lot. I'm sure some of you guys have experience with that, where you basically are handed a website project with maybe a logo at best. And you basically have to translate that into a website. So that can be a lot of fun. So we'll be kind of sharing those today. Alex, do you want to actually kick off? Like, actually, I led this one, but do you want to kick off who Lob is and kind of a quick high level overview?
Yeah. Are we in the Lob web channel? Okay. So yeah, Lob is a smart direct mail company. It's kind of a oversimplification, and I'm sure the brand team knows a heck of a lot more about all the inner workings, but they send out direct mail and they have all these different metrics and things in the background. And so it's really intelligent and smart mail. And so this company had a ton of pages. I'm trying to think how many pages we did for this site. Over 20, I think, at some point, which is one of our larger projects. We usually are kind of more in the 4 to 5 page range. So this had a huge system, had a really high expectations in terms of page consistency, use of brand extension into the web. The brand team worked for, I want to say, 4 or 5 months on this project, maybe a little bit less.
Yep.
And that's pretty long for Unfold as well. And so they did a ton of work on sort of the brand foundation for this. And so, like Benson said, we had a huge foundation to kind of start from and kind of jump off and extend that into web. And we were fortunate to be able to work with our brand team kind of in sync and make sure that every page that we were putting out was exactly what the brand team had envisioned in terms of their extending the brand into the web world. So the pages, I think, turned out pretty well. But what's probably unique about this website versus other ones, like Benton said, is having a really, really good brand foundation just helped us in the end. And so most of these are componentized. We only get to do that on certain projects that have kind of the runway to allow us that sort of time. Most of the time we have to sort of do things really quickly, get them out the door. We don't have time for full like design systems. And so Lob was unique in that way, that we had plenty of time to establish, foundational pieces and then be able to create and reuse components across the board. And it made our job so much easier to be able to put out all these pages in kind of the amount of time that we had.
Yeah, we can jump into the actual client file and kind of run through the process. We follow a fairly standard process from start to end. There are a couple of things I think we do differently than possibly other agencies when it comes to like collaboration and things like that. But with every project we have, we start with stylescapes. This one actually is not a great example. Our other one is a little bit cleaner, but I'm sure some of you are familiar with stylescapes, but it's basically kind of like a modified mood board where you kind of stylize a mood board with some additional assets to kind of create something unique and get early sign off from the client on a design direction. So usually we do 2 or 3 to 4 and then narrow it down. This is a horrible example because this one we had a brand like really established, approved. We really didn't need to do much. So this is a pretty bad example, but that's typically what we start with. And then we move into wireframes. And this one, we had their existing content. We just kept everything the same, but this is roughly what their website looked like before. Wasn't too much to look at. It was pretty basic. But actually, let me pull up the brand also that we were able to, that the brand team created, because it was a very robust system. So yeah, this is the final brand guide, but they did a ton of work before this. Like, I think they literally spent weeks and weeks just on color palette. But we had a refresh mark, this new like kind of angle that's used as like a framing device throughout with this nice paper texture and gradient. Typography was established. We had all kinds of stuff like color palette, iconography even was created to get us started. Imagery, even guidelines on how to use the angle. And some of this actually Alex and I started to create. Like we had a more basic brand to go off of, and then we would kind of create some stuff, and then the brand team would incorporate that back into the brand guide as we would kind of working alongside each other. So that happens quite a bit, where we'll take some ideas that they have and riff on them and start bringing them into the web space. But that's what we had to start, which was great. We don't always have such an awesome foundation to start with. Sometimes it's just like a really quick brand sprint. We just get a logo and a color palette. Sometimes we don't have anything. We just get like a pitch deck or something. But this was one of those cases where we had a full brand, and it really comes through in the final product of the website, which is great. And this one's live too, lob.com. They had a different developer build it out, but I think it came out really well. But anyways, we start with wireframes. So that's pretty standard. We're not doing anything too crazy, just getting all the content in the right spots. And the scope actually ended up increasing as we went. I think we started with like 5 pages and we ended up with at least.
Can I ask a quick question?
Like yeah, go for it.
So these are wireframes, but like reproducing the old version of the website, right? It's not like wireframes for the new version.
No, well, it was to think about the new version, but the content stayed the same, which we don't do that all the time. But with this specific client, they didn't want to change content too much. There were a few things here and there that we changed, and that's why we did go through the wireframe process, just to account for moving things around or rethinking through some aspects. Because we did have a couple things kind of shift around. Like you can see that we have testimonials here. Oh, yes. I know we had some small things here and there that we changed. But yeah,
while we're sorry, real quick, Ben. While we're taking a break on that, I have another question. You were going through the branding, and there's a lot of really vibrant colors in this brand, and I love that. But I'm curious, whose role is it in Unfold to go through and check like accessibility? Is that on the brand side, the website, collaboration between everybody?
Yeah, honestly, that's something we could get better at. It's something that we'd try to incorporate definitely on the website. Brand, I'm not sure if they always do that. I think it depends, but we did have with like specific type styles, we're using gradient, on like a dark background. Obviously we can't do the same gradient on a light background. So those were definitely some considerations that we had, was trying to be aware of that.
Cool. Awesome.
Does anyone else have any questions?
Devin just posted in chat, why bother with low fidelity if your low fidelity is pretty much hi-fi, just without the colors?
we do that sometimes. Like, yeah, it is kind of funny. Alex can definitely vouch for this. Like, I feel like we do like an in-between with wireframes, because we like to think like a couple steps ahead. Like, what is this going to look like once we get into like the hi-fi version? Like, we'll think about like the layering. Like, for this is a great example. Like, they wanted to show, it's a direct mail company, so they wanted to show like their postcard, but we wanted to incorporate those like this angle that the brand team had established. So they're definitely not necessary. I think that's just how we like to think. It's kind of funny that we do that.
When I say,
because it can be a little distracting, I'd say. Like, you can definitely make that argument that it could distract from the content itself. But go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, I was going to say too, I think the reason these maybe look a little bit higher fidelity is because we had that good brand foundation. Font styles and stuff were already established, and so we didn't have to necessarily keep it pretty agnostic from styling. We were able to kind of apply some of those things, and it made our job easier to just have some of those foundational pieces so we could kind of piece this together. And to answer your question, Devin, I think the reason we do wireframes is to keep that structure. So if we were to jump straight into high fidelity mockups, two different versions might look completely different. And so not having an underlying structure to kind of go back to and point to and make sure all the content's accounted for, we can look at this and quickly scan all the information. And this is like kind of a middle ground where this is not necessarily unstyled text and gray boxes. There's some styling to it, especially with the angles and fonts and things. But having that structural foundation is super important, just so we can go back to make sure we got all of our ducks in a row and we're not getting distracted by some of the styling pieces at that phase in the project.
Yeah, well, what I think is interesting is like the idea of what is really a wireframe and what is like low fidelity and high fidelity. I think kind of changes depending on like the designer or the team. For example, I don't know if that's exactly what Devin mentioned when he mentioned wireframes, but I know that me and Devin, we have like kind of a similar approach to doing the designs. And when we do wireframes, when we talk about wireframes, like it's a lot lower fidelity compared to this wireframe that you're showing right now, which looks gorgeous already. So our wireframes, for example, is just like a collection of boxes, and then we just throw some elements on top of it, like very raw, like without like a lot of organization, just figuring out like where things will be positioned into specific sections. And this wireframe that we're looking right now, like it's let's say one step or maybe more than one step forward after this. So it's interesting to see like how different perspectives about what a wireframe is. It changes from person to person and from team to team.
Yeah, I definitely, Diego. There are other projects where we literally just draw gray rectangles and put like, hey, hero section here, contact form here. It really does vary from project to project. Like Alex said, this one was a little bit more established. Like, we had less critical thinking to do around revamping the content. So that's probably why it ended up a little bit more refined.
Good points. Christian asked a question in chat. Do you have a base template that you work from with styles, example layouts, etc., a framework of any kind or is everything from scratch?
I would say we're working on that right now. It's kind of a combination. I think we have some jumping off points, but just with how quickly we work, most of the time we just do it from scratch. But we are definitely talking as a team about having some templatizing things, especially in the wireframe phase, to have that to start off with, so we're not having to just code even anything in auto layout. We can just grab some components and kind of go and run. hit the ground running on that. It's definitely something we're trying to work on. We just need to get together as a team and put our heads together and make sure we have all our bases covered. But yeah, that's where we're at the moment. It's all from scratch. We'd love to run faster a bit.
I think the more we work together, the more we get frustrated, like how much time we're like could be spending doing other things rather than going from scratch. And I think we kind of had to wait to get to this point, like working with our Webflow developer, Yankee. Most of you guys know him.
Mm-hmm.
We've been working with him to like build out a system that works really well with Webflow. You know, all the padding and spacing and auto layout is all consistent. So that's definitely in the works. I'm really excited to get to that hopefully soon.
Awesome. Devin. Michael Yankee. Not Yankee Doodle. That's awesome. All right, y'all can keep going. Sorry.
Awesome. Alex, do you want to do, we did wireframes. Do you want to do the next step?
Yeah. So after we get client approval on the wireframes, we jump into the fun stuff. And so design exploration, I'll zoom out just to show you. And this is probably even a little bit tame, to be honest. This is actually the entire site, which again, sometimes this will look like this and it'll just be a homepage. And so it kind of depends on what we're starting off as. But we do enter sort of a exploratory phase that lasts a long time. And so we spend a couple of weeks just on the homepage and mostly on the hero section. And so Benson and I will kind of go off. And this isn't a great example too. I think these are variations on something. Do we have, Benson? I think we have some art stuff archived maybe. This is all pretty clean.
Yeah. We also have like the separate page for team push too.
Oh,
It gets a little messier.
Yeah. And so Benson and I will work for a couple of days and then we have a team push. And so we just invite anyone from Unfold that wants to spend an hour and just do something different and explore the project with us. And so people will just jump in on a morning and just spend an hour with us. And so we'll give them some prompts. We'll have some things kind of established. We'll have the wireframes and a couple directions that we've already started on. And these are actually kind of more fleshed out. These are not just a hero section. But we just tell the team to go wild within those constraints, like, just make up something crazy. And I think that's what Unfold's known for, is just the wild and crazy visuals that are completely like, eye candy out there, but wanting to get as many ideas on the table as we can. And so we have some starting assets, we got some photos and colors and things. And we're just sort of exploring and riffing on the same ideas until we find something that sticks. And usually these hour sessions are really productive. And there's usually a lot of great people that kind of come from different backgrounds. We have product designers, we have brand designers who can come in and kind of just give their 2 cents. And so from that, we'll pick a couple of directions that we like, and we'll go back to the client and kind of pitch those. Here's some other ideas we had with using hands and things. Ultimately, it didn't work out, but just quick and dirty, grab some stuff, put it through like a remove background AI program, just to remove some of that extra elements. We'll kind of reference like Stranger Things, just other pieces that we like along the way. And so next phase from that is just continuing to refine. So when we jump back to design exploration, once we have a hero section that we like, we continue to kind of move down the page. And so we spend probably 50% of our project time on home pages. Maybe that's a little bit high, but we do spend a long time just on the hero section on the homepage just to establish the overall visual style for the site, because it's going to influence the rest of the site as we go. And so here's kind of that finished homepage.
Yeah, we work to establish like typography, color, button styling, all that good stuff in the hero. And then it makes it a lot easier just to carry that styling down the page. You can start to work pretty quickly.
And one thing that we've started to do more recently is once we have a homepage and everybody's feeling good about it, we'll jump in and we'll start doing our style guide. And this gets filled out over the course of the project, but just to make sure that we're not pulling inconsistent types and things, we'll create kind of version 1 of the style guide that we can use to then jump off and create the rest of the pages, having that foundation. Benson, you want to kind of talk about next phase?
Yeah. So you notice a lot of these are fairly similar, but we started just riffing on different hero sections.
Before we move on, can I ask a question about your process for the hero section part of the project?
Yeah.
So you were mentioning that you do that team push where a bunch of different people come together and you kind of like explore a bunch of different alternatives. I'm wondering how you kind of narrow down to what direction you want to pursue after you kind of have all these ideas in front of you.
Yeah, that's a great question. So at Unfold, we're really collaborative with our clients. So they get to get in the Figma file, they see all the messiness, and we bring them kind of more into the process. So we're actually, when we do this, we pull out, like, say we've got 20 really rough concepts. We'll pick, 3 or 4 that we think are the strongest. And this file is a little messy. I'm not sure which ones we ended up going with, but let's say we went with like these few here, and then we'll present that to the client and they'll provide their feedback and we'll kind of go back and forth on that. So that's kind of how we decide, is we bring the client into the process. And a lot of times we do have to like push back. Like if it's, we'll try not to create anything that's like too off brand. But there are times when we get feedback from the client where they want us to do something that might not align with brand. So that's where we can kind of push back. Any other questions?
Doesn't look like it. I think we're good for now.
Nice. So yeah, the design exploration, that's like kind of the main chunk, is where we continue to refine and we'll finalize everything. Usually we try to get the homepage fully approved before we move on. That doesn't always happen because we work on a retainer basis. Sometimes we'll have to adjust the timeline and revisit things or add things to the scope, which is what happened with this project. Actually, that the scope doubled in size as they like wanted to keep adding more. So we expanded it and readjusted the timeline. But we'll get the homepage approved.
Yeah, so you guys go into full, like from beginning to the end, like from wireframes to high fidelity for the homepage first, and then like you move on going back to wireframe steps, or you just like do wireframes for everything. Then like the homepage is the first one that gets high fidelity version approved, and then you move on to the next.
Yeah, we usually, ideally, we would do all of the wireframes first. Sometimes it doesn't work. Like this one, they added like 5 or 6 pages after the fact, but those we didn't necessarily need wireframes because we had existing pages and we already had a system created. But that's kind of ideally is like wireframes for everything. Homepage itself, get that fully approved. We don't always do mobile at that point. Sometimes we'll do it later, but definitely the desktop for homepage, and then we'll move on to the other pages. And then I see a question from Devin. Like, how do you feel when you design a gorgeous hero and the client says, we want intercom to pop up immediately and cover the right side? Well, I feel like have we had clients like with pop-ups? I feel like we've had 1 or 2.
We've had some with maybe not intercom, with some other pop-ups
where they ask for one. Yeah. Usually I feel like, and maybe it's just because we're Unfold, like people want the crazy stuff. They're usually not trying to do like some high converting marketing landing page. It's usually more like explainer site, like for a product or something like that. So usually it's a little less like, conversion and SEO oriented and kind of more on the design side.
And I think it depends on if we're developing the site as well. If we're developing things and Michael Yonke is aware of these sort of things, then we'll definitely kind of go back to the drawing board and make sure that things are not overlapping in weird ways. But for the most part, we kind of hand off final files and they have to deal with some of that on their own, unfortunately.
Yep. So that's the kind of the main chunk is like the hero exploration, where we lay out everything. And then as pages get approved, we'll move them into a design final, which is a separate page. So once it's done, we move it in here. We make sure like type styles are all linked up, colors are linked up. If we need to have components in there, they're updated. And then we basically don't touch it the rest of the time. And this one was interesting because we moved from kind of doing a bunch of exploration for the homepage just around the hero. We did so many iterations of that to just crazy production mode where we just wanted to bust out a bunch of pages. And we don't always do this, but this one we actually made a lot of components. I'm trying to remember where we put those actually. Oh, it's in style guide. So that we could move more quickly. So we have tons of components just for different hero styles so that we could move quickly, just like throw them in there, swap them out if we need to. We had components for basically all of the graphic elements. So the kind of like the UI, dashboard, visualization that we have, these different assets so that we could just bust stuff out. It's all, I think, like pretty much all in auto layout. So we could just crank stuff out and just move content over. And that moved really quickly. It was kind of nice. It took a little time up front, obviously, but it totally paid off because this was a larger project.
And we even have some of these, we can change the glow, like the background glow colors on some of these as well, because they needed so many different variations. So
yeah, that was kind of cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like everything was a component, like the angles, like you could turn them on and off. That was kind of neat to be able to just like quickly do that as needed.
Important question. Diego wants to know if you guys name your layers, and I can see frame 1597879573 on screen. So
that's intentional.
Yes, if numbers are a name, then yes, we do.
Yeah.
Did have a few other questions come in. Emmett asked, and I think I know the answer to this one. Can y'all talk about how pricing and scoping conversations work at Unfold?
That's a great question. I mean, we don't directly handle that. That's more of like our sales team and kind of leadership, but they do collaborate with us on like if we have a new inquiry, they'll come to us, be like, hey, how long do you think this is going to take? Like, is this range going to work? So we have a lot of say in how long of engagement or how much, what the deliverables will be, which is great. So a lot of times we get to avoid, we always get to avoid having like some crazy deadline that we have to like work crazy hours for. We don't do that at Unfold. And then everything's retainer. So they have a flat rate. They just pay per week, and it's kind of regardless of the deliverables basically. So if stuff needs to shift around, maybe we need some illustration work, maybe we need some brand work, we can kind of adjust stuff as it goes up to a point. I'm sure, Alex, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I'd say to Benson's point too. Yeah, we're not having to work crazy hours. We have a set amount of time that we are able to work on a project per day, and there's two of us usually work on the same project, and then we'll switch gears halfway through the day and do something else, which is nice for our own like creative. This gives us sort of a creative break throughout the day. But like he said, we don't have to worry about pulling all-nighters or anything like that. We have a very healthy work-life balance at this company, which is super, super awesome. So yeah, it just sort of depends in terms of estimating. Yeah, we just, as a project leads, we get to control how long we get to work on something, and that's kind of on a per day or per week basis, not necessarily, we'll get it to you by Friday, no matter what kind of thing. So that's very helpful.
That's awesome.
And we create our own timelines, which is always like nice too. So like as a lead, like Alex and I will trade off as a lead on a project. So we create our own timelines. Anytime something changes, we update the timeline so the client is always in the know. So if they're like, hey, let's spend a bunch more time on the homepage, we'll be like, okay, well, either we need to extend our engagement or we might have to cut some things out. So we're always we try to over communicate as much as possible, so the client's always kind of in the know there.
Wow, this view is incredible, by the way. Like, I want a copy of that. Had a few other questions come in. What would be a general time estimate for a homepage design for a site with like a little bit of branding associated with it? And maybe that's answered in this screenshot here, but
yeah, what would you say, Alex? Like anywhere between like 3-4 weeks or 2 to 4 is like ideal
for a homepage.
Yeah,
I'd say 2 is kind of our normal. If there's some good brand foundations there, for sure, we can. Yeah, with wireframes and kind of final approvals, I'd say 2.5, 3 weeks, maybe, kind of max.
Yeah. So this one, let's see. This actually is not the full timeline.
Cut off the timeline.
Believe it or not, it's cut off. It goes up over here. This was a longer engagement. This was, I think, 4 months just for web, and brand was going on well before that. So I actually can't look at the homepage. But yeah, that's probably about where we would be. And then as you move down and start adding pages, it obviously gets faster. So you can see there are some times we're spending only 2 days on a page, or they overlap a little bit. But yeah, 2 to 4 weeks, I'd say, for a homepage. There are definitely ones that we've spent longer on that are crazier. But for something more standard, yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. And in that same vein, do y'all have revision limits on these projects? Or is it...
I'd say no, we don't usually. Since we are retainer, it's like there are pros and cons to it. The pro is like you don't have some crazy deadline. It's just whatever we can get done in that amount of time. If they want more time, they have to pay for it. So no, we don't necessarily have limits to revisions, but that we can run into issues sometimes where they're like, we're halfway through the project and they're like, oh, hey, can we go back and change the homepage? Like we want to do these things. So having a retainer basis can make it a little challenging to push back on that. So, and that's something we're kind of working through. If that answers your question.
I think it may. Keith, if you need anything else, let us know. And one more question. Devin asked, when you're designing, do you have motion in mind or do you design for static and then let someone else handle the motion?
Yeah, Alex, you want to take that?
Yeah, it's a good question. And it's something we're trying to get better at because motion can often be an afterthought. I think with any project, we try to at least consider motion in our projects. I don't even know if we had any motion in this project. But
in the hero we did, but that was about it.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah. Most of the time we have a conversation early on and understand sort of the client's expectations for what they might want in terms of animations. But like I said, we're trying to get better at this too, because our process up to this point is we might do some prototypes within Figma, which gets the point across, but they are quite limited. You don't really get keyframed animations as sort of transitionary things. And so we kind of use those just to get the point across. And then depends on if we're developing it or not. And we've gotten to a point with our in-house developer, Michael Yonke, that we'll have lots of conversations. And so it does consist of notes. It consists of prototyping examples, other examples out on the web. And so, but that said, we're also trying to work on our process where we might just do a static site and then consider motion if there's a lot of time. Because I think a lot of the time motion is an unexpected addition that gets dumped on developers. We can, as designers, kind of plan things out and be like, oh, just make this like look really fluid and nice. And we don't necessarily explain things as well as we could. And so it unfortunately kind of lands on the developer to code all that stuff. And so more recently, we've actually been outsourcing some of our motion to someone else who specializes in that sort of thing and can export Lottie files for Webflow, which makes Yonke's life so much easier. So I think as a team, we're trying to get better at that and identify if there's going to be extreme amounts of motion. We have to sort of know those going into it, and then we'll maybe outsource those things or kind of have additional engagements for additional animations.
Awesome. Questions keep coming in. Dennis, I'm gonna give you the mic. You had a question?
Hey, yeah. Quick question. So how do you guys usually go about hi, I'm Dennis, guys.
Hey, Dennis.
Yeah, it's my first time joining. Diego invited me a long time ago, and I finally made it because I saw the notification.
Yeah, Dennis is from Almo Studio. If you guys don't know about Almo Studio, I don't know what you guys are doing, but yeah.
Drop a link.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Great to have you, Dennis. This is awesome.
Yes, thank you. I recently acquired Ammo last year from Diego DS, if you guys are familiar with him. But yeah, so I was curious on how you guys do go about creating the UI illustrations, because we've been doing it. So we've been doing a lot of Lotties and different things like that, and I've kind of been developing our own process in-house for, coming up with like custom illustrations, UI illustrations of their software backend, where I just have them take a screenshot of what they currently have, then we just put dummy text and like redesign it from scratch. Do you guys have a better process of doing that to make it a little bit more like compelling, better, or is that traditionally like the way that you guys all do it?
For the Lottie animations?
Well, not necessarily the Lottie animations, but the UI illustrations of like their software. Does it make sense?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have as much familiarity with like the animation side, so I don't know if I'd be able to answer your question, Alex. If you had anything.
Are you asking just animation or illustrations? Because
I
was going to mention So I would say, if you want to follow me for a second, Benton, Lob was unique because they actually had us do some UI stuff for them, and they used Benton and myself, which we have some UI background, but most of the time it sort of depends on the client. And so sometimes clients have great looking UIs and they just want a nice looking screenshot that might be spiffed up a little bit and have some different UI elements or like branding elements kind of tagged along with it. In this case, though, they didn't have a super great UI, and so they wanted us to sort of stylize it in some ways. And so we would do kind of the quick and dirty where we'll take pieces of their existing UI and kind of stylize it, add some different elements in, some gradients and things, kind of fudge it a little bit. But then I'll show sort of the evolution here. We did some initial like UI mockups that Benson and I did ourselves, and then tried to bring those in and stylize them. And we ended up going with something that was a bit more UI accurate. I'm trying to find where the final is. Unfortunately, it was more boring because they wanted something that was more accurate to what they actually had at the time that we were doing the site, but it just wasn't looking very good. And so it sort of depends on the client. If they want UI accurate stuff, we try our best to sort of spruce it up and make it look as cool as possible, but at the same time, we try to make it sure it's actual realistic, so it's not setting false expectations. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, that makes sense. And also one last question, if you guys don't mind.
Yeah,
go for it.
When it comes to getting copy, so like I've kind of like went back and forth still, even we've done tons of projects. I'm just like never satisfied. Right now we're taking the copy at the beginning, and I lay out like a copy map based off the sitemap that I create, especially if the client wants to do it in-house. Where I still find a little bit of delay, even if I give them kind of direction on how to go about creating the copy. And so like it holds back the whole entire process for the team. I don't know. So what I've thought about doing is we thought about ditching the low fidelity, but then I thought about it's like, let's keep it and bring it back, and then create the low fidelity based off the wireframe. Based off the sitemap, and then have the client fill in the wireframe, the low fidelity wireframe. So going forward for the high fidelity, it might be a little bit better. What do you guys typically do for your best practices?
Alex, you want to take that one?
Yes, and I'd say it depends on the client as well. So we have an in-house copywriter, Beth, and she's great. And so if we know that copy is going to be something that we have to include, we'll get with them early in the process. We try to have her start a good 2 weeks before we even do any design work. And so she's meeting with them, understanding their needs and all that, and then writing copy for us. So we at least have some sort of baseline to start off with. When we don't have that, in this case, Lob just wanted a kind of a one-to-one from their current site. So that made our job easier. We didn't have to have any copywriting. It was all done. And then we've also had newer sites that they have some idea, they might write some stuff themselves, but it's not really hitting the mark because they're not copywriters. And so we use ChatGPT to honestly go in and kind of clean things up. And it just generates new ideas and helps us truncate in a few places. And that's been a really helpful tool. I'm not sure to answer your question about the wireframe. We don't necessarily go back and keep these super up to date in terms of all the final copy. It sort of depends on when we get certain pieces. It's helpful to have the copy before you end design work, so you don't have to go back and keep multiple versions of wireframes and stuff.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. Okay, so the chat. So if you're not charging them for copy and the client does their own copy, you'll just go and clean it up with ChatGPT. You're kind of like free of charge, almost like that's a courtesy thing, just because you're the expert.
Yeah, I think both Benson and I do a little bit of copywriting anyway. We might get some copy that looked really good in Word or something, but then when it gets on the page, it might be too long or something. And so we'll take some liberties where we can and kind of suggest a couple of things. And so it all depends on what the client wants. If the client doesn't care, and we can go use ChatGPT or something, it's just a time saver. But we also we'll self-edit in a few places and make sure that, things aren't being said in 10 words that could be said with 5. But it also depends on if they have very particular set of, words that they want, we'll make sure that they provide that copy to us.
Okay, sweet. Thank you. That was actually very helpful. I appreciate it, guys.
Sure.
I'd say questions. Alex and I have both been in this industry for a really long time. Like copy is always a huge pain point. If someone can figure out how to solve that, I feel like you'll make a ton of money. But like getting clients to just have copy, have all of it done before the project, it's like, and all the agencies I've worked at, it's almost impossible unless you're hiring a copywriter from start to finish, which is ideal, like to have that be part of the process. clients saying that they're going to write copy, they don't always follow through, or they do it and it's horrible and like we need to edit it and it still doesn't work. So it's always a bit of a challenge. So there's a lot back and forth.
All right, so yeah, no, I almost just started including it with our services automatically, but all right, so that's a good way to go about it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, previous agencies I worked at, we had copywriting as part of the process, and that was the best because you could work back and forth, and we have copywriting now as well, but then it was like kind of a longer engagement. You can go back and forth a lot. So we do that at Unfold too, but a lot of times it's a little bit shorter. Maybe we don't have a copywriter for like the full project, or so it kind of changes based on the scope of the project.
Okay, perfect, sweet. Thank you guys.
Hey, thank you for your questions, Anderson. Thanks for joining us today. We appreciate having you here.
Sir.
Milena, I think you had a question still. I'll give you the mic real quick. Maybe.
Hello. Oh, hi. Yeah, I actually already asked my question earlier. I just didn't know how to remove myself from the queue, but thank you.
Okay, nope, you're good. All right. Ben and Alex, y'all can keep rolling.
Awesome. Hey, Eric, would this be a good time to kind of talk about Unfold Academy?
Yeah, no, perfect time. And by the way, I know there was a lot of talk in chat about where Yankee's at. He is he's busy on a project trying to wrap it up. So he wishes everyone well and misses everybody, but he'll join us when he can.
Yeah, he's been pretty booked lately. We've been shipping a lot of stuff, so he's killing it. Awesome. So yeah, kind of one of the big things, kind of the reason that Eric is hosting us today is we wanted to share Unfold Academy, which is a new full suite of courses that Unfold is launching at the beginning of the month. So that includes brand, illustration, product, and web. They'll be kind of coming out at different times. But we have a intro to web design course, 4 weeks, that'll be launching on May 1st. We also have a Web3 or product design for Web3 also launching. And we have there'll be live stream versions, and then also like recorded kind of self-paced with live office hours. So we're excited to share that. And we actually collaborated with ADP List, if anyone's familiar with them, for the Web3 product course and the intro to web design. So Alex and myself will be running the web design course, and it'll be twice a week live streams. We'll have assignments that you can work on. We'll be able to support you kind of with like questions throughout the week and during office hours. But basically, you'll learn whether you have a strong knowledge of web design or not. You'll be able to create a landing page from start to finish, going through the exact same process that we do at Unfold, and you'll get to see even more client projects as well, kind of behind the scenes. So we're really excited about that. We've been spending a lot of time on it, kind of getting that out into the wild. So yeah, that's kind of what we're here for and excited to share. Get that out into the wild, and we'll keep building that and kind of iterating on it. So we're real excited to see to have people join.
Yeah, if you're interested in checking out more, I just dropped a link in chat. You can follow that and scroll through and see the whole program of what they're going to offer. And we're excited to see you launch it, and glad you could come today and kind of walk us through a little bit behind the scenes of what you're going to be showing. And yeah, I think this was great. So thank y'all.
Yeah.
And keep going. Yeah. All
right, let's do it. So we have another project. We've got a little bit of time left, and we can hop into one more if you'd like. So if anyone has questions, feel free to keep dropping those in. But our first project was one that had like really robust branding, obviously, and then we had another one that basically had zero branding. I think they sort of had a logo, basically.
Alex said come through.
All right, 1 second.
Very good.
Yeah.
So yeah, this one's called Coinable, and we do a lot of work in like the crypto Web3 space, and this one's basically e-commerce, like Squares, or not Squarespace, like Square in the Web3 space. So this one started with no brand. We had a logo, and these are a better example of stylescapes. of kind of what that process looks like. Alex, do you want to run through kind of like the stylescapes real quick?
Yeah. And I have not seen these in 6 months. So trying to jump back into the headspace we were in. I think like Benson said, there was some existing UI, there was a logo, but there was not much else. And so the client, I think, was pretty wide open to what we were going to do for them. And so we come up with a couple different styles that were all pretty different from each other. And this is not usually the case, not always the case. It can be the case if the client wants us to kind of invent something for them. And so this first one, kind of classy, modern, and clean. We played around with different serifs. And so this, we'll do the same thing for all 3 stylescapes, is we'll take the existing copy or whatever it is and try to put it into a style that works. And so we'll grab maybe some existing elements, create some buttons and fonts and things, and kind of put them into place here for a hero section that kind of sets the tone for the rest of the stylescape. So this is something we created, and then we find inspiration from all the different sites, Behance, Pinterest. We have a whole list of stuff that we kind of go through and poke around, and we'll kind of grab pieces that we like, and we'll maybe leave comments or make a video to kind of explain these things and pitch these to the clients. But it sort of gives like a full flavor of what the website might look like based on even previous work that we've done at Unfold. Both of these are examples of that. And so this first one, it's kind of more classy. It gets a little bit less focused, I think, towards the end here, but sort of clean, simple typography paired with really interesting kind of UI mockups. The second one's a bit more futuristic and sleek. And so we kind of grab some different graphics that are more in kind of the Web3 like expected space. And so a lot more gradients and things that are very common and kind of trendy within the Web3 world. And so this is sort of that second style. Lots of gradients, lots of nice UI stuff. Other pieces from previous projects as well. And then lastly, the third, we call this more kind of colorful, playful, a lot more flat, so almost no gradients at all. And so any UI work was going to be a bit more cartoony, be a little bit more unrealistic, but have kind of a consistent tone across the board, using really nice colors that are all flat and work together. And then some good examples of other inspiration, a very flat UI. Some stuff from SafePal that we had done previously. We try to get icons and illustrations, kind of basically anything that's going to be on the web. We try to include examples of what those might look like. I think the winner was a combination of things. This happens a lot too. So we'll have distinct styles, and then they kind of want to cherry pick a little bit from each one, which is okay. And so I think we kind of merged two different things into one. And so this was sort of the final stylescape.
I can answer Devin's question too, as far as stylescapes, like why stylescapes versus mood boards. For brand, we actually use mood boards specifically. They don't do stylescapes. With web, we like to see it as like a really quick way to just get some quick ideas out there. We try not to spend too much time on stylescapes, like maybe a half a day, depending on the project, just so we can quickly get those ideas out. And a lot of times just getting their logo and to clear things up, stylescapes are where you're actually kind of combining some things. Like a mood board is just images that you collect, but stylescape, we're actually adding things to assets that we're finding or creating ourselves just quickly, so that we can kind of quickly mock up a style direction. So the reason we do those is it saves us a ton of time in like getting feedback from the client and iteration, like rather than going full out and like designing a hero section or even a whole page for each of these directions. We're just doing these quick mock-ups using assets we haven't even created that we've just grabbed to kind of get a gauge from the client on what's resonating with them. And it saves you so much time. It's been working really well for us. And then, Devin, your follow-up question. How do you prime the client for a stylescape? And then assuming that most people do know what mood boards are. So a lot of times we do explain, like, especially if a client has not gone through the design process or they're not as familiar with our specific process. With our kickoff calls, when we start a project, we usually walk the client through like, here's what to expect, here are all the steps we're going to take, just so they kind of get an idea before we even start. And then we will explain like what a stylescape is and kind of what the goal is. So we'll explain like, these are just quick assets that we pulled together. We're just trying to get a gauge on overall visual direction. If we have a strategy work done, we'll tie that in, and that can help dictate the direction that we choose. But luckily with a lot of our clients, they're pretty familiar with the process already, which is great. So the ultimate goal is just to nail down like ideally a single direction for the style that we can carry into the rest of the site. And we do, yeah, Nico, we do include, we try to get some layouts in there. Our stylescapes are a little bit all over the board sometimes depending on the scope. But yeah, we try to get some like actual elements in there. Like here's a quick stat card, like not super hi-fi, but just kind of quickly communicating an idea. And then sometimes we'll throw in other assets like further down, like what would a content section look like, or what would the typography look like? So stylescapes are great at that.
On the topic of typography, what consideration do y'all play to licensing typography and fonts for web projects for your clients? Like, are you always sourcing those from Google Fonts, or are you looking at different foundries and pitching to your client, hey, we think this will be a good fit for you, and helping them get the licensing for it? How does that work?
Yeah, I'd say it depends on the project. If we have a good brand foundation, usually that conversation's already happened. And the brand team has kind of identified fonts that they like. They do a lot more work with fonts than we do. We do quite a bit of exploration, but not to the depth that they go into. And so they'll have those conversations with the client and make sure that they're comfortable paying for fonts and understand kind of about how much they're going to cost. A lot of the time, if there's a free alternative, we might go with something like that from Google or Adobe, but it sort of depends on what the client's expectations are. If they're willing to pay all of this money for web design, they're not going to get held up by paying a couple $100 more, hopefully, for a font to license that in the end. But we try to make sure it's not going to break the bank at the same time. So.
Understood. Got it. Thank you. We got about 5 minutes left in the presentation, so if anyone has any questions, now's a great time to get them in. Otherwise, we'll let Bitten and Alex kind of wrap up things and let them go on about their day. Want to respect everyone's time. So,
yeah, since we're short on time, we can just show you kind of like the final result. Like we had, we went through wireframes. You can see these are more basic. So here's like, we're not really doing much design. It's just content, image block, call to action. So this, you can see our wireframes kind of vary a little bit depending on the scope. Like this was a pretty quick project. I feel like it was like a couple of weeks, if I remember right. Yeah, 3 weeks.
3 weeks, yeah.
Oh yeah, no, 2. It was like 2 in a day or something. Yeah. So a little bit faster. But it was just the homepage. So that helped a little bit. But yeah, we did a lot of exploring. You can see very different styles kind of all over that. But this was based on, the final stylescape. And then starting to iterate, we ended up landing on kind of a more monotone black and white with pops of blue, which was the one brand color that they did have that we could use. And then even product team had actually already done work on their dashboard. So we were able to pull some of that in, which was great.
I believe Dennis has a question real quick. I had one. So the product team and getting some of these UI elements in here, have you ever had an occurrence where you're working on a website project for someone who has a product, and along the way they say, hey, now that we've seen this, we want our UI to look better, and now the project becomes a product project as well?
Yeah, that happens all the time. Like with Lob, that sort of happened. Like we ended up doing some of their UI just as the web team because it wasn't a full product engagement. But yeah, that happens all the time. A lot of times we'll refresh the site and then they want their UI updated, or the other way around. They'll have their product updated and that looks great, but their website's super outdated. So those definitely go hand in hand for sure.
Yeah. Dennis, you had that question. Mike's yours, sir. Maybe. All right, while we wait for Dennis, Nico asked, how do you share the timeline with your clients?
That was a great question. So we use this tool called Team Gantt, and it's just a really simple Gantt chart tool. And literally all we do is like we create this timeline, we rough it out, we get it approved internally. Like if I'm a lead, I'll share it with Alex and our creative director and anyone else who's involved. Be like, hey, does this look good? And then we just send the link or a screenshot to the client, and then anytime it changes, we update it, and we just keep everything at Figma. So this is a screenshot, and like we'll just keep track of it in here. Like this is today, we're working on this, and we send updates to our clients like basically every day. We use Loom and Slack messages. So even if we only got a little bit done that day, we still walk through it. We share the file, like they can poke around in there, drop comments. So they're always in the know what we're doing.
Yeah. Dennis.
Yeah, I'm sorry, guys. I didn't realize I was talking to myself because I was on mute. So whenever you guys have the project from start to finish, what team member roles who all sees the project in terms of like from your team? Who all's involved on the project from start to finish?
Yeah, Alex.
Yeah, well, I'd say it starts with Peter. He's kind of our main person that everyone reaches out to, whether through the website or just through personal connection. Peter's excellent at selling things. He kind of establishes all their needs and requirements and kind of distills that down into like a request for work. And so we have that side of things where we have some project managers and stuff who will interact with the client from sort of an admin perspective. In terms of the actual production, if it goes through branding, we have a strategy person named Moss, and she's excellent at coming up with brand strategy. And then we have a whole brand team with their own creative directors and stuff. And then when it comes to web, Benson and I, like we said before, will kind of trade off who's leading what project. And it sort of depends on who led last or whatever schedules look like, but we'll sort of trade off. And so I think on Coinable, Benson was the lead. I took the assist position. And then we have John Eicher, who's our web creative director, who kind of oversees everything, makes sure that everything's running properly. And then we work with illustrators and whatnot. And I'd say the project lead roles, it's a little bit more in depth than the assist. The assist can kind of just focus on the design work, whereas the lead has to manage the timeline. They establish the timeline. They do most communication with the client. They'll lead meetings. They'll do check-in videos and things of that nature, kind of field any questions on Slack. And so we get to be in both positions at either time and kind of get experience in both of those.
Okay, perfect. And then you guys, so the project lead, is that the project lead is in constant communication with the rest of the team, or are they usually in constant communication with like a smaller project manager that like is feeding information?
Yeah, I mean, we're so small, we don't really have project managers. We have some, like our creative directors sort of act as that as well. We do have some people that are kind of higher up that will oversee multiple projects, but we don't necessarily assign one project manager to each project. It's usually just Benson and I kind of managing all that. And the larger team is usually pretty small as well. And so it's all sort of internal communications.
Okay, sweet. Perfect. Thank you.
Awesome.
Yeah, since we're like a retainer based, the project management is not as complicated. So it's basically, usually we're working on 2 projects, like 4 hours in the morning, 4 hours in the afternoon, split between those 2. And we just try to stick to our timeline and keep the client updated. So it's very simple compared to, juggling 6 or 7 projects with a bunch of different timelines.
Yeah. Wait, I might have missed this when I first joined. How exactly does the retainer model work?
Yeah, they just so Unfold just charges a flat rate. I can't remember if it changes from department to department. I want to say it's a flat rate across the board, but I could be wrong. But for web, yeah, they just charge for 2.5 people per week, basically. So Alex and myself, and then creative director who's on about half the time to support. And we just charge a flat fee for however many weeks they want us. And we basically estimate how much we can accomplish in that amount of time based on their objectives. And if sometimes it takes longer, and that's okay, we tell them like early and often like how things are going. And if they want to extend, they can.
Really?
Very simple.
Cool,
yeah.
That's pretty cool. Sweet. Thank you guys.
Okay. Thank you all. I think we're at time. We definitely want to respect Benton and Alex's time and let them get back to their day. Guys, you have any last thoughts before we wrap up real quick?
I love your work. Thank you.
It's fire.
We appreciate it.
And well, thank you both so much for coming, and thanks to Heba for setting this up and the Unfold team. Y'all have been great supporters of what we're doing here at Flow Party. Great to have you back today. And everyone who's watching either now live or on the recording later, if you're interested to get more on how Unfold approaches their web design process to start to finish, check out courses.adplist.org. The Intro to Web Design course is available for sign up now. There's more courses coming out soon. And follow everyone, the whole Unfold team on Twitter. We'll post all the links in the description of the video later. So thanks, guys. Thank y'all.
Thank you.